What's up, everybody? Welcome to System Crafters Live. I'm David Wilson, and we're back today with another live stream for the community where we get together and talk about whatever cool topic we have in mind. And today is going to be interesting because we're going to talk about a new package that I have not actually tried yet. I've read the manual a little bit, but we're going to see how it goes whenever I try to use it to put together something interesting. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But first of all, I'd like to say hello to the people who are here so far. There's CTOID, I'm not sure how you pronounce your name. Jeff Bowman, hey Jeff. SSH, Amalvedia, Gun, Daigo, Alternate Ved, is that how you pronounce your name? Highly Evolved, Alejandro, Thomas Van Aben, Dakader, sorry. Yeah, so thank you all for being here so far. I appreciate all of you. And let's talk about some updates really quickly. So I finally got a place to live in Greece, like an actual place that is mine, not, you know, place that I'm staying. I've been staying with my wife's parents for probably about 9 months now, which has been interesting. But we finally have our own place. However, the problem is we don't have electricity or internet, and probably won't have electricity or internet for another week to 2 weeks. So it may disrupt the streaming and video schedule over those next 2 weeks. We'll see how it goes. It may be that I could record a video and then upload it or something like that, but I may not be able to do streams. So I'll keep you posted on how all that goes. And probably I'll make a post on the YouTube channel because people tend to see those whenever I make those because they show up in the YouTube feed. But I may also mention it on Twitter and other places. But at least it's nice to finally be getting to a place where I can see us settling down after all this long protracted move, but yeah, it's been interesting up until now. Hello to Hector and Ivan, Mjolnir, Tuxdoc, Sebastian. I think I saw Mjolnir say something before in the chat, but I lose it sometimes. So anyway, Alejandro says, congrats, and your own house is important to mind sanity. Yeah, it definitely is that for sure. So, before I get into the topic of today's stream, I wanted to do something else, something that we've been thinking about for a little while and finally acted on. And that is, we are going to rename the configuration we've been working on called Rational Emacs to Crafted Emacs, which I'm really excited about because I feel like the name fits better with the sort of philosophy and tone of this community. I picked the name Rational Emacs because I thought it sounded cool, but what I realized is that it can be taken the wrong way. People can think of it more as like an elitist idea of, you know, this is the best way to do an Emacs configuration, which is really not. If you go read the README and the sort of philosophy behind why we created this project, it's more about, you know, you being able to have a starting point to build your own configuration on, but it's not really meant to be like the end-all, be-all Emacs configuration. So we're going with a new name of Crafted Emacs, and I want to say huge thanks to Jeff Bowman, who's one of my co-maintainers on the project, for actually doing all the work to rename everything and to get the repository ready for this rename. Also putting together a migration script, so if you've already been using Rational Emacs, you can just run this script, and it should make a copy of your configuration over to the new default config location, and then change all the references to Rational Emacs and Rational modules to the crafted naming variation, all variable settings, and all that kind of stuff. So if you are using Rational Emacs, after I do the next little task here of merging, you will probably need to go and update your configuration or use Jeff's script to try that and see if it helps you to get migrated. If you try the script and it doesn't work for you or you have an issue with it, please feel free to file an issue on the crafted Emacs repo. But right now it's still Rational Emacs on GitHub. So let's actually finalize the rename now. This was actually Jeff's idea, but we're gonna go and finish renaming the project. We've got a branch here. That's the crafted rename branch. In fact, let me go into Magit to do this. It's much better to do it that way. So I'm gonna pull up, let's see, where was I? Magit, Rational Emacs. So we're in Magit here. I'm gonna press M and then M to merge another branch into this one. I'm gonna pull the origin craft rename branch into this. Oh, Git failed. What happened? Let's see. Which character is this? Conflict. Automatic merge fail, fix conflicts. You know, that shouldn't actually happen unless my branch is out of whack. This is a lot of fun. All right, let's go back to the branch. Let's abort the merge. Yes, let's abort that. And then go back and fetch again. I must have had an out-of-date pull or something. Update font example, is that right? Yeah, that's right. Are we on the same base? The magic of doing it live. Let's try a pull request and see what GitHub tells me. Can't automatically merge. Probably there's something in here that it doesn't like. Let's try a pull request. Okay, there's a few files with conflicts. Well, okay, so after the stream is over, we'll get all this worked out. But the idea is that we're going to rename this repo to crafted Emacs and not Rational Emacs. If you can see, I'm sweating here because of all this. So then it will have that name instead of Rational Emacs. So after everything is done, we'll get that working. But I'm happy to be renaming the project because it feels more correct. Try VC mode. That's not going to help. No thanks. So I'll have to be doing some rerouting of like old videos to mention that there's a rename. There's a whole lot of bookkeeping involved in that, but that's fine. All right, so let me jump back into this. All right, so couldn't do that, unfortunately. I think I should have probably tried to do a merge before I started the stream, but things have been a little busy, so I haven't had a chance. Someone asked, are you using FreeBSD? No, I'm still using GNU Geeks. I tried FreeBSD sort of as an April Fool's joke, so I didn't actually continue using it. Tuxdoc says, have you planned a new Emacs IDE episode, maybe website development? I need to do that. I haven't done it. You know, honestly, it's harder to put together those IDE videos because there's so much other tooling involved that it's been something I've been procrastinating on, especially for languages that I don't use regularly, like let's say Haskell. I don't really use Haskell, so I don't know enough about it to know whether I'm using the tooling correctly and to give suggestions on how to use stuff. So that's the main reason why you haven't seen any future Emacs IDE videos. Now, I do want to do something on like C and C++, since I've done that quite often in Emacs. So we'll get back to that at some point in the future, but for now, at least I haven't really planned any future Emacs IDE videos. A. Peter says, still on Doom Emacs, but one day I may go to crafted Emacs. I don't know a good way to keep all the key bindings. I love spaces, leader key, and all the other key bindings I'm used to. Yeah, well, you know, I'm coming up with a video on key bindings in Emacs that covers this whole idea of, you know, setting up your own custom key bindings and doing things like creating your own leader key. So that's something that will come out at some point. I've got it planned. I just haven't actually recorded it yet. Alejandro says, hey, Peters, great having you here. Love your videos. Your name sounds familiar. I probably have seen your videos before, but at the moment it's slipping my mind. Okay, so now for what you're all here for. Today we're going to try out a new note-taking package by Protistilau Stavru, also known as Prot, which looks like it could be a promising alternative to other packages like org Rome. Basically the type of package where it's not about having a monolithic org file or any kind of text file with notes. It's more about having individual text files that have smaller pieces of information that you link between to form a knowledge graph effectively. And Denote came on my radar maybe like a week ago, or maybe even less than a week ago. I'm not sure. Probably I saw somebody talking about it in the Discord. But it seems really interesting based on the principles that Prot has in his manual, which we'll take a look at in a moment. So I'm very curious to try to see if I can build up a note-taking workflow from scratch while reading the manual for Denote, and see if I can replicate some of the things that I use from org roam. It may not happen like, I may not be able to completely replicate my org roam workflow, but I think that based on what I saw in the manual, a lot of the same concepts apply. So I'm curious to see how that will go. There's also a couple other interesting choices that Prot made that we'll talk about related to this package. But things I want to try are obviously things like creating new notes, like what are the strategies for creating notes using this package. Also linking notes together, since linking seems to be one of the important parts of using the package. Backlinks, I don't know if there's a way to actually see a list of links from other notes to a note that you're currently looking at, sort of like what you get with org roam or even a program like logseek, which we talked about before. Capture templates, which is obviously a thing for org mode notes, and I have a feeling that this is going to be pretty much standard practice template usage, which is to be expected from a package by Prot, I think, because he tends to like to make things work more in line with how Emacs is supposed to work instead of making his own version of things. And also like a journaling workflow, because that's really important to me. Like probably the thing I do the most in Emacs with org files is write. Journal is kind of the wrong word. It's more like just like thinking logs, I guess. Like I'm thinking about a certain thing I need to do, or maybe like a project idea, or trying to solve a problem, and I need to write it down somewhere. So I have to like call up a capture template and write it all down, and then have a way to get back to it later. So that is another thing we will try to look into. Garjola says, "Hi, is this where we talk about Zellkasten on Herbstluft WM?" I think Garjola is trying to test my pronunciation abilities today. Thank you. Ivan says, "Have you met Prot in person?" No, I have not. Prot is on the island of Cyprus, which is some distance away, a pretty decent distance away from mainland Greece. So no, I've not had the chance to meet him, but I probably will one day. I mean, I'm sure there will be some circumstance under which I'll meet Prot. It'd be pretty cool to like, go to Cyprus and, have a nice chat with Prot, with the sea in the background, that kind of thing. That's just sort of like the, I don't know, the stupid image you have of people in Greece. You are on an island, you see the sea in the background, that kind of thing. So yeah, maybe we'll do that one day. We'll be meditating on a mountain. That's what'll happen. Okay, let's see. Alejandro says, recently Sasha Chua wrote an article about Denote. That's cool, I haven't seen that. I've been really disconnected from things recently, so yeah, I haven't been following up on what's been going on in the community. Ivan says, my mistake, I assumed you're both in Greece. Well, technically Cyprus is part of Greece, unless I'm mistaken. It's an island that is part of Greece, I think. I'm an American, so my geography is bad, as we all know. Hey, Gavin, good to see you. Okay, so let's check out the Denote website. So it builds itself as a simple notes for Emacs with an efficient file naming scheme. So they're just going straight from the manual here. And let me know if people have a hard time seeing the text. That should be fine because it's zoomed in a little bit. So let's see. Let's go to the overview. That's where all the good stuff is, in my opinion. Gun says, there are 2 islands in Greece, Cyprus and Crete, aren't there? Well, there's like 100 islands or more. But yeah, those are 2 of them, that's for sure. So Denote aims to be a simple to use, focused in scope, and effective note-taking tool for Emacs. It's based on the following core design principles. The first one being predictability. And this is one of those that people might not like so much because it's mainly about how the files are named. They have a very specific file naming scheme, which is reminiscent of what org roam does. If you've ever seen org roam files, whenever you create notes with it, they have like a timestamp at the front. Denote seems to take this a little bit further, where it has a timestamp at the front, the name of the note and then tags at the end, which there are reasons to do this, which he goes into in the manual, which we'll take a look at a little bit later. There's actually a little section in the manual that talks about it, so it'd be good to take a look at that. Dacater says, I think there are more than 200 islands. That might be right. There's a lot, and some of them are very small. So the file name alone should offer a clear indication of what the contents are without reference to any other metadatum. This convention is not specific to note-taking as it is pertinent to any form of file that is part of the user's long-term storage. There's interesting implications to this, both in the use of Emacs and other external programs, which we'll get into a little bit later as well. Composability, be a good Emacs citizen by integrating with other packages or built-in functionality instead of reinventing functions such as for filtering or grepping. So basically, anything that you do with your notes in the Denote package or the notes that you've created with the Denote package should work well with other existing Emacs functionality, like let's say in Dired or with grepping across files in your notes folder or any other functionality that comes with Emacs. You should be able to use things you already know instead of using invented functionality that basically does the same thing. And also an interesting aspect here is that Prot primarily writes his notes in plain text files, .txt files, instead of org files, which is interesting because honestly, you don't really need a lot of org's functionality if all you're doing is just writing down text notes. Like formatting in a lot of cases isn't really necessary if it's just information. You know, document structure where you could have like, you know, cycling headlines, which you could really do anyway with text files. I think like the outline mode or outshine mode or any of those modes would allow you to cycle headlines in a text file. But, you know, it's interesting to think that you don't actually need org mode to do note-taking in Emacs because text files are effectively the same in a lot of ways for plain information and not like, you know, greater structured documents and whatnot. So this is sort of a core thing in this package where you can use text files, you can use org mode files. I think you can also use markdown files and probably even other file formats as well. So if you are interested in using other file formats that might work well with other programs or other operating systems like, you know, Android or iOS, then this could be an interesting aspect for you. And switching on demand to an org file only when its expanded set of functionality is required for the task at hand. So we'll see a little bit more about that in a bit. Portability, the notes are plain text and should remain portable. The way Denote writes file names, the front matter it includes in a notes header, and the links it establishes must all be adequately usable with standard Unix tools. No need for a database or some specialized software. So that's, excuse me, I've got an air conditioner on my head right now, and it's making me want to sneeze. So org Rome requires a database to store its metadata about all the notes that you have. And one benefit of that is it makes it really quick to show a listing of all your individual notes with their titles so that you can get to the note you're looking for very quickly. Denote avoids using any kind of external metadata storage. It tries to just use everything from the individual files themselves, which is useful because it means you only have one source of truth for all the information in your notes. So if you sync all of your notes down from a Git repository or use SyncThing or rsync or any tool like that, your notes are already up to date on your machine, and you don't have to like manually invoke a DB update like you do with org Rome whenever you sync your notes from another source. So that could be really useful to you if you don't like the fact that org Rome requires a database. However, I don't know yet what implications that has on the usage patterns of Denote versus org Rome. So we'll try to take a look at that in a bit. Gunn says, Prot even had PDFs in his video. That could be useful if you look at a lot of PDFs, like if you're doing, you know, you're looking at research papers or manuals or anything. That could be cool if you could pull those in as well. I think that org Rome has some support for adding annotations to PDFs, but I haven't used it at all. Hey, Benoit. Jeff says, FYI, merge the crafted rename branch to master, resolve all the conflicts, and push. Sorry, hope I'm not derailing the current content. We'll go back to the rename in a little bit. Actually, let me take a look really quick. So we got it merged now. Cool. Thank you, Jeff, for merging that. Let me just really quickly jump in and do this rename so that we have it all done. Here we go, crafted Emacs rename. And if you've already cloned this repository down, Git will still follow the link forwarding from the previous repo, so you shouldn't have to change anything about your repo to pull down the new changes. As far as I know, all links should still forward back to this new page too. So, all right. Thank you very much, Jeff, for taking care of that. Now I think we're all up to date on that. Okay. So, let's see. Adequately usable with standard Unix tools. So basically, if you want to use command line tools to look at your notes, you should be able to do that as well, which I think is pretty useful. And yeah, that's all for that one, I believe. Flexibility. Do not assume the user's preference for a note-taking methodology. Denote is conceptually similar to the Zettelkasten method, which you can learn more about in the detailed introduction at the Zettelkasten website, which you had seen in the stream I did about Zettelkasten with org-roam a long time ago. Notes are atomic, one file per note, and have a unique identifier. However, Denote does not enforce a particular methodology for knowledge management. I mean, org-roam really doesn't either. You can have enormous note files, which I kind of do in some cases, but maybe other Zettelkasten-inspired packages do that, but org-roam doesn't really force you to do anything. So let's see. However, Denote does not enforce a particular methodology, blah, blah, blah. Denote does not check if the user writes thematically atomic notes. It's up to the user to apply the requisite rigor and or creativity in pursuit of their preferred workflow. There's some documentation on writing meta notes, which might be interesting to look at in a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time reading the manual to you, but I just want to give my perspective on these principles, I think. Hackability. Denote's code base consists of small and reusable functions. They all have documentation strings. The idea is to make it easier for users of varying levels of expertise to understand what is going on and make surgical interventions where necessary, like if you want to tweak some formatting. In this manual, we provide concrete examples of such user-level configurations. So it seems that Denote is set up so that you can build your own workflow on top. And I think that there's an example here of how you could do a journal or diary by using the APIs of Denote. So that's what we're going to try to do in a little while. Now the important part, Denote is the familiar word, though it is also a play on the note concept. Plus, we can come up with acronyms, recursive or otherwise, of increasingly dubious utility, like don't ever note only the epiphenomenal, which, you know, leave it to Prot to use the $2 words, or I don't know what the phrase is for that, but you know, the words that most people don't know. Denote everything neatly, omit the excesses. That's a better catchphrase, I think. And it's properly recursive. But we'll let you get back to work. Don't eschew or neglect your obligations. Okay, so he's given another one here. Very funny. So, points of entry. This is the part where we start talking about how to create new notes. Another thing I should mention, which I am reminded about here, Denote does actually have the capability of creating notes in subdirectories. And that's something that org-roam didn't have the capability of doing for a while. I think in org-roam 2, you have the ability to do that, but I'm not sure exactly how you can do it without capture templates. So we'll have to see how that works here. But there's a function for that, and we'll start getting into looking at this a little bit. Okay. So let me get started by actually just installing the package, and yeah, I'll do it in my config because I don't want to get things a little bit too confused right now. Actually, let's go in the scratch buffer. Good old scratch buffer. So straight use package denote. Let's see if I can get that pulled in. Let's see, straight recipe. I haven't pulled recipe repositories in forever. Let's see how long this takes. Is it done? Hello to Lucius Chen, who just subscribed. I believe that's on YouTube. Yeah. Okay, can I find package denote updating recipe repository? Let's just use package install. I don't like using package install, but today we may have to. If it works, denote is unavailable. Is this on package repos? I thought it was on Elpa. Something may be busted in my config. Yeah, it's here. VimFun also just subscribed. Thank you. Okay, so that's funny. Oh yeah, package, refresh, contents. This will also take 20 years. Hey, finally. There we go. Require denote. Cool. Yeah, I'm not going to use package for this. I'm just going to do plain old normal Emacs configuration style. Okay, so we got Denote pulled in. Now, first of all, I want to change the directory where all this stuff gets saved because I don't really know where it goes by default. So let's just try to look for the variable for that. So denote dash directory. Okay, cool. So it would normally be in home, David Will, documents, notes. That's fine. I probably will forget that exists. So how about I just go and set denote directory to denotes. Okay. And then we can try this denote function. How about that? Denote, metax denote, file title. Okay, so system crafters. File keyword, Emacs, politics, economics, philosophy. I think that the keyword list must be Prot's list. So file keyword, I don't know, YouTube. Cool. So I'm gonna save this file. And as you can see, the name of the file, I don't know how visible this is, maybe at the echo area you can see it bigger. It's in the denotes folder. It has the timestamp at the very beginning, 2 hyphens, then the name of the note that I typed in, system crafters, with a hyphen in between. So basically it lowercases everything in the file, in the note title, then puts hyphens between where the spaces are, and then 2 more underscores, and then the keyword. I think if you have multiple keywords, it will add those maybe with commas between or something. I know there's a scheme for that. So we have this title here. It starts off as an org mode file, which is cool. I wonder if there's a way to set the default format. Let's see, directory prompts. Okay, I'll have to look into that in a little bit because I don't see it right off the top, but we can see that it did add the date with a inactive timestamp, file tags here, and the file identifier as well, which is probably going to be useful for linking in between notes, which is good. Okay, so there's also a couple other things. Denote type. How about that? Denote type. Create note while prompting for a file type. Here's how you can do it for text files. So how about this? This is plain text. And I'm going to put an exclamation point here just to see what denote does with it. YouTube keyword, goofs. All right, so it ripped out the exclamation point, which is probably good. You don't want to have special characters that don't work for the file system. And for a plain text file, it still puts the front matter or the sort of metadata for the file in the file. It just puts it in a way that is readable by other programs. I think there's a program that can read this kind of, field colon value format. What is that one called? Someone probably knows. I know that Geeks uses it for certain things. So if you wanted to do processing on a folder containing text files like this, you could easily pull out the metadata and then use it for other things, especially with scripts of any program, or any scripting language, even Bash you could do. So pretty cool that you could easily do that. And then you can just use whatever stuff you want here. So let's put some hello. This is a basic note. I want to try linking from this to another file, but we're going to check this out in a little bit. Denote date. So let me see. Denote date. So date and time for note. So it seems like it just starts off with the current timestamp. If I press enter, file title, this could be a journal entry. And then journal. Let's just put journal there and then save it. Okay, so it starts off with a an org file. File tags journal, identifier. So it's interesting that it just creates a normal note. There's nothing special about it. It doesn't create it in a separate directory, sort of like how org Roam does it. So I'm wondering if the timestamp approach actually is meant to be used for pulling all of your journal style entries for a particular day. using the timestamp at the beginning of the file. We'll have to look into that, but that could be pretty cool, actually, in my opinion. Because it would give you the ability to create notes just however you want, and then be able to look at anything from a particular day to see what you were writing about on that day. So, or at least what you were thinking and creating notes about on that day. So that could be pretty cool. All right. And then denote subdirectory. Let's try that one. Denote subdirectory. All right. So select subdirectory. How about I just type in journal, match required. Maybe you have to have created it yourself first, which probably is okay to do. So what if I do this? I'm gonna use the plus sign in DRED journal. Okay, so let's try that again. I'm gonna use denote subdirectory, journal, file title. This is another journal entry. Journal, cool, I'll save that. Then you can see if we go back into DRED, we have journal here, and I go in the journal folder and we have that entry. So I guess it's a quick way to create something in a particular subdirectory if you want to have a directory structure to your notes files. And for me, at least with Vertigo, it just gives me a list of all of them. So if I were to go, let's say, go back into DRED, create another subfolder, super secret, let's say, then run denote subdirectory again, then I can see the super secret folder here, and I can just filter down to super secret and then create something there. So that could be a very quick way to dump notes into a particular subfolder if you like to have a folder hierarchy. Or Chrome doesn't really encourage that. They just want you to have like a flat folder full of files. But it's interesting to think about the possibility of having a notes folder with subfolders that get synced to different places, so you don't necessarily have your entire notes everywhere. Maybe you can even have a Git repo in one of the subfolders on your machine. And maybe you could even have like a main notes folder that has subfolders for certain areas that all have their own syncing, their own Git repos, but then your denote setup can create notes in any of those places very easily just using this approach, and maybe even some custom eLisp code that you use. So that seems pretty cool. I might actually use that because I have, various different things I'm writing notes about, especially when planning, system crackers videos, etc. So that could be pretty useful for me. All right. And then let's see, or leverage the org capture templates by setting up a template which calls the function denote org capture. So you can basically just use denote through the standard org capture system and then create new notes like that, which could be pretty useful, I think. Standard note creation. Actually, let me check the chat really quick, make sure I'm not missing anything. Piotr says cut -D to split by colon in bash. And then alternate ved said denote DRED mode is also cool. I'll check that out. And let's see, the manual indicates that directories must pre-exist to commands. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, you kind of want to make sure you're only going to have, you're not going to create directories by accident, maybe. Gun says, Prot is using the last modified date of the file when converting a file to a denote file. Cool, so maybe you can convert files. I haven't seen that yet. Okay, so the denote command will prompt for a title. Once that is supplied, it will ask for keywords. The resulting note will have a file name as explained in the file naming scheme. Let's just quickly pop over to that section. And it's basically what I explained before. Date -- title _ keywords dot extension based on what file extension you're using. And the keywords field consists of one or more entries demarcated by an underscore. So multiple keywords would have underscores between. I think the point there is that it makes it very clear which part of the file name is for which metadata that is associated to that file. So date -- title _ keywords gives you the ability to use any tool in any scripting language to quickly get a read on what's in the folder without having to read file contents. So it's a good idea, I think, if you really want to have the ultimate power in managing your information, however you like, basically. And I think that's pretty much it. I mean, there's some examples here of file names. We've already seen a couple, so we kind of have a sense for what those look like. Cool. So then The file type of the new note is determined by the user option denote file type. Okay, so there is the denote file type variable, which is nil by default, but the file type extension for new notes. And I think you can make it be anything you want. When the value is the symbol markdown YAML, the file type is that of markdown mode with the front matter uses YAML. Apparently there's also a TOML variation where you can use TOML for the markdown front matter, but I don't really know why you would need to choose between them because they're kind of similar. So I'm not sure really why you would choose one versus the other. When the value is text, the file type is that of the text mode. Okay, so basically any other non-nil value is the same as the default. So, okay, there are 3 expected values here: markdown YAML, markdown TOML, and text. So we can make that text if we wanted to, but for me, I would just leave it as org probably, because I prefer to just use org files. Though I do respect the idea of using text files as the default. So keywords prompt supports mini buffer completion. Available candidates are those defined in the user option denote known keywords. So if you have common keywords you want to use, then you could set those up. So let's say I wanted to set my own list. So what was it called? Denote known keywords. So I'm going to set this to be a list of, I think it has to be list of strings, right? Yeah. All right. So let's say journal, YouTube. I don't know. YouTube's not really something I would use. Like keywords are probably things like really sort of low level of granularity. Like I want to see all files that are of a specific type. So probably you would want to have like 20 different keywords that it could be. Maybe you do. I don't know. Personally, I wouldn't. I'd probably just, mark it a certain way. Then again, you could also use file structure for this same thing. So you don't necessarily need to have keywords if you're going to use a folder hierarchy for storing your notes. So if you have a journal folder for all your journal notes, you don't need a journal keyword at the end of the file because you already know that everything in the journal folder is a journal note. So this is just an example of how this package gives you multiple ways to set up your workflow and how your notes are stored so that you can decide how to interact with them, which I think is a good idea. So known keywords, journal, let's see, projects, ideas, something like that. We can just set this and then run it with Control-X, Control-E, or Control-Alt-X. And then whenever I create a new note, denote, let's just denote, and then file title, mesh, and then interesting. So it knows that I've used goofs and YouTube as keywords on previous files. I think it must, because I just changed that variable. So I wonder how it actually knows that. If it scans the folder, I'll have to take a look at that. But I didn't add these two to the list. It did it itself. So I'm going to choose projects, and then we've got a file for mesh here, which is great. So then I'll kill that buffer, and then I'm curious where that comes from. So denote keywords. So last keywords, infer keywords T. Whether to infer keywords from existing notes files names. So this is behavior you could turn on or off if you want. It's kind of cool that by default, you can set your sort of initial set of keywords, and then whatever other keywords you just decide on the fly to use, it can show those to you as well. So you can just make this a blank list by default, and then apparently Denote can then figure out what keywords you might want to use based on the previous ones. When non-nil, search the file names of existing notes in the variable denote directory for their keyword field and extract entries as inferred keywords. Now, when does this happen? That's what I want to know. The aforementioned completion prompt only shows the denote known keywords. Use this if you want to enforce a restricted vocabulary. For advanced Lisp usage, the function denote keywords returns the appropriate list of strings. So I want to see what that looks like. Inferred keywords. So if I xref definition extract keywords from path, file name, non-directory. So it's basically just walking the files in the folder, which is not that bad though. I mean, that's kind of the benefit of having the files set up with this naming scheme, is that you don't have to read the file. All you got to do is just look at the file name listing. And I wonder if is this doing it recursively? Let's see, let file name, not directory, path, string match. Ah, this is a, no. So how do you, okay, the regef, the string, file name. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm probably looking at something a little bit farther back. So if I use extract keywords, okay, inferred keywords, delete dupes, map can, okay, directory files, fine. And this must go for recursive. Yep. Cool. Okay, so it does recursively walk your note structure, find all the keywords in file names, deletes duplicates, and just gives you a unified list of that. Gavin says, so when are we going to see a node view? I don't know if that is possible with this right now. Rahul says, thanks for making wonderful videos. How to take notes on YouTube videos with timestamps in Emacs org mode. Probably the best way to do that is by using mpv.el. And then I believe that has a way to connect to a playing video, which you can play videos with MPV using or from YouTube. So you can probably Google that, just mpv.el YouTube. That is possible. All right, so let's go back to, where were we even? Okay, yeah, I think we got there from looking at this. Denote known keywords. More candidates can be inferred from the names of existing notes, so figured that out before the manual told me. Multiple keywords can be inserted by separating them with a comma or whatever the value of CRM indicator is. That must be an Emacs variable. What was that? CRM. CRM indicator. I wonder if that's a mistake, because it's CRM separator. So if anybody wants to go and potentially send a, but let's do Control H O, CRM indicator. No, someone wants to do a contribution to Denote documentation. You could probably change the CRM indicator to CRM separator, I think. Unless I'm missing something. When the user option denote sort keywords is non-nil, the keywords are sorted alphabetically. Technically, the string sorting is done with string less p. So I guess it doesn't get sorted otherwise. That might be useful. Yeah, Shraz. Denote sort keywords. So it's on by default. So when I try to create a note, foo, pj, no, that's not sorted, but probably that's Vertigo doing that. Interactive behavior of the denote command is influenced by the user option denote prompts. Denote prompts. Okay. Oh, okay. So basically, the metadata that you want to add to a note could be customized here. So let's see. Let's go back to scratch. I just want to try this out to see what it does for sure. Denote prompts, and these seem to be symbols. So title, keywords, color. Let's just give all of our notes a color, right? Oops. And then denote. File title, this is a blue note. Goofs. Ah, didn't work. How does that work then? Interactive behavior of denote command. Maybe it expects specific variables or values. Okay, yeah. So title, keywords, file type, subdirectory, date. So that's kind of useful. If you want to have the denote command by default prompt you for specific stuff, like maybe you don't care about keywords, but you do care about subdirectories, you could change this to do that instead. So let's try that. I'll go back to scratch and not be silly this time. And we'll change this to subdirectory. So this is sort of like the default behavior for the denote command prompt. File title, this is a journal. And I want to see how this copes with duplicate file names. Let's put it in the journal folder. It prompted for subdirectory this time. All right, so I think I messed that up. Did it create it in the right place? I haven't saved it yet. There it is. Okay. How about this? Let's try it again. This is a journal! Exclamation point. Save it. Go into the folder. All right. So the differentiator here obviously is a timestamp. They both have the same note name, but that's not terrible actually. It's kind of interesting if you think about it, because sometimes you want to write about the same topic multiple times. I have a tendency to do this where I want to have notes about a specific topic over time that may be unique and not necessarily overwrite the things I had talked about before on the same topic. So I don't know how this works for that, but we'll have to see how you can look at notes. But this is pretty cool. I like this. I might actually use this if I had a note set up for this. Let's see, prompts occur in the given order, which is pretty useful. If the value of the user option is nil, no prompts are used. The resulting file name will consist of an identifier and a supported file extension. Yeah. User option only affects the interactive use of the denote command. For ad hoc interactive actions that do not change the default behavior of the denote command, users can invoke the convenience commands. If we look at the definitions of those, I would imagine that they are specializations of the denote function, and they're probably passing in the list of things to that. Let's see. No, that was the wrong one to look at. Denote date. Right here. Okay, so yeah, so basically it just uses a let to set the value of denote prompts and then calls denote interactively. So denote, the interactive function denote is sort of like the core entry point, and then any of the other functions that you can use to create a note are like wrappers on top, which makes sense. And if you want to do your own customization or interactive commands, you could do it this way as well. This must have lexical scoping turned on. Yeah, lexical binding of T up there. So yeah, you just override denote prompts just for this this let block, and then you call interactively on denote to do that. Cool. Alrighty. Geo says, another stereo MC connected fan here. You mean a fan of the movie Hackers? Yeah, that's a classic. Okay, so what are we looking at now? Convenience commands for note creation. We just sort of uncovered the truth of those, I think. Create note by specifying file type. Creating note using a date. Now, what does it say about this one? Normally, denote reads the current date and time to construct the unique identifier of a newly created note. Sometimes, however, the user needs to set an explicit date plus time value. And this could be useful for a note-taking workflow where you need to create a note at a past date and time, or create one in the future. So like maybe you want to call up all of your notes that are happening on a particular day because you create notes for yourself in the future that you'll only see on that day. So for instance, like if you have a reminder of something, you can create a note on that day 2 weeks from now. Then if you have a solid workflow on how you process your notes and you're looking for the notes for the current day, then, I mean, if you have a function you call up even, then you could pull that back. So that could be a pretty useful thing that you could do with this. What I want to see though is denote date. It would be nice if it gave you the calendar for this, so you could navigate around the calendar instead of having to manually type in the date and time. Maybe there's a way to change that behavior. So let's take a look at, well, we're looking at it right now. So denote prompts, what if I look at the denote function? So if I go to the definition, whoops, go to the definition of denote, where is it? Date. Is there a way to change the way that you pick up the date? Denote date prompt. You can probably replace that function. Let's see. If I go to the definition of that function, Read string. Okay, so that's really basic. You could override this function or give advice on the function and potentially use the picker. Ashra says that's a really complicated feature of org timestamp. Interesting. Maybe he's referring to something else. Yeah, Denote plus calendar PR, Alejandro says. It'd be a good option, or at least an example someone could give. Let's see. How does org roam do it? So org roam date. So org roam dailies go to date. There's got to be a function for this somewhere. Wow, what is it doing? Processing modified files. That's a moment to take a sip of my coffee here. What could you possibly be doing right now? Come on now. Helpful is doing that. Where can I go for... Come on. Really? Good. Thank you. Org roam dailies. Now, let's go to the code for that one. Capture date. Org read date prefer future. I mean, I think it does this. What? Okay, whatever. Alejandro says, does it helpful index the sources? Probably that's what it's doing. Okay, so how about if I look for a diary date? I'm getting way off track here, obviously, but I'm curious about how this would work. Calendar. Okay, so probably it's a calendar function, right? So if you just run calendar, come on. Calendar. All right, so it just gives you that. Now, is there a way to use the calendar function to select a date? Calendar. Calendar read. Right? Calendar read S expression. Anyway, there's probably a way to do this with the calendar and then pick the date that way. I would prefer that. So if anybody wants to come up with an example for doing that, I'd definitely love to try it. Sergio says, maybe I got lost with something here, but what are the advantages of migrating to Denote if I use org roam? Well, that's what we're trying to figure out right now, because I don't know yet. We are sort of just looking at the strategies that Denote uses in comparison to what I know about org roam. So we're figuring it out over time. I think that Denote gives you some benefits that you could use if you want to do things more your own way. Org roam is kind of more of a, like, you know, set it up and it does its job kind of thing. Denote obviously does that too, but it's a bit more bare bones to start with, and you kind of have to think about how you want to put it together, which I guess you can say that about org roam too, but anyway. All right, let's go back to the manual here. So we know about all this stuff. Create note using org capture. So this is something that might be useful to look at. So there's another library called Denote org capture, and you can add a capture template to the list. So if I go and put it back in my scratch buffer, paste it right here. With eval after load org capture, I mean, you don't have to do that depending on how you load your config, but it's kind of a good practice to do. Load up the Denote org capture and then add to list org capture templates in new note. What do I have in my capture templates right now? Because I probably don't want to like override my stuff. Okay. New note with Denote plain. I don't know if that's something for Denote or something for org capture. I think it's org capture. File Denote last path. What is that? Store the last path. Is that a variable? Oh, interesting. Denote org capture is the function that we're going to call into. Create a new note through org capture templates. Use this as a function that returns the path to the new file. File is populated with Denote's front matter. So basically, it will prompt you probably for the title of the note, and then it will come up the file name itself. No save T doesn't automatically save the buffer. Immediate finish nil. It waits for you to finish it. Kill buffer T. Yeah, I think it kills it after you finish it, then jump to captured. All right, so let's try this little block of code. I think it added that. So org capture, and then I'm gonna use in for new note with denote, and then it's gonna ask me the file title. So captured with org. File keyword, goofs. And then now we've got a capture here. Basically says it's a capture. It's basically a capture buffer, but it has the whole file name that it would have if you complete this. But if I use Control-C, Control-K, it will cancel that. Now it says it wrote it. I'm gonna go check and see if that actually did happen, because that would be interesting if it did. Yeah, it didn't write it out in the end, so that's good. So you're able to cancel the writing of a note if you want to. Org read date, Ivan says. Okay, I might try that. So, if you wanted to add something extra, like an actual template, I've forgotten what the syntax is for that, but let's go take a look real quick. So we got file. Okay, that's fine, but can you give the file extra information? Well, let's see. Once the template is added, it's accessed from the specified key. Users may prefer to leverage org capture to extend file creation with specifiers described. Capture specifiers. What? Ignores the denote file type. Always sets org file extension. Well, that makes sense because it's an org capture. Interesting. So I don't know if there's a way to pre-populate other information. Because you have denote org capture here. Let me try this. I'm gonna go check out the code for this. Denote, oh, okay, I see the capture specifiers. Is that what it does? String would format specifiers for org capture templates. All right. But that is specific. That's like a variable, single variable. What if you want to have different denote capture templates that are different? Because what it's doing here is it's making the body of the new note have the denote front matter plus the denote org capture specifiers. Alright, so maybe there's a way to override that specifically for that one. But we won't go too much into detail on that, but it would be nice for things like if you want to have a journal template that has specific headings already applied to it, you would need a way to customize the content. I may be misunderstanding what's happening here, but I think that's what it's doing. It's using this denote org capture function to create the front matter that goes into the file by default. I suppose you could make your own wrapper to this denote org capture function that appends stuff to the end of it, whatever you want. Like for instance, come on, go away. Thank you. All right, so defun my denote journal template. I think that's an empty, oops, I already have it here, right? Yeah, no parameters. So instead of, well, no. You would need to have lexical binding turned on for this to work, and as we've seen, sometimes that's a pain. Let's do this. Concat. I'm gonna call denote org capture. This is might be a bad idea. Let me take a look at that code again. Is it doing anything that might prepare note? Keywords add to history. Okay. This could be really risky to do it this way, but let's just see what happens. So, thoughts, tasks. All right, let's do that. Oh wait, actually no. This is the way I want to do this. Appended template. Appended. Cool. So let's do this. My/denote template, and then paste in this string, which I apparently already have quotes for. Fantastic. Lispy, leave me alone. Here we go. Okay. Let's take that out now. Ah, come on, dude. Lispy's killing me right now. There we go. Okay. So I've got this... I wonder if this is going to be duplicated now if I change this. We'll find out. Okay. So it should have called my Denote template. Ah, no. This needs to be a lambda that does this. Okay. So now if I were to do org capture invalid capture template. Okay. Well, anyway, that's sort of the idea I had in mind, but I think it's not going to work like this. Excuse me. So let's keep moving. Capture templates seem possible, but I think that it's not as straightforward as I would like it to be right now, but maybe there's a way to do it that I'm not aware of. Maintaining separate directories for notes. We already know about that one. Is there any kind of ideas here? Oh. So there's an implication here, apparently, which says that there's, however, the possibility to maintain separate directories of notes. By separate, we mean that they do not communicate with each other, no linking between them, no common keywords, nothing. Think of a scenario where one set of notes is for private use and another is for an employer. We call these separate directories silos. Oh, okay. So I see that. That could be useful. There's certain cases where I would probably want that too. The user option denote directory accepts a value that represents a path to a directory. Normally this user would have one place where they store all their notes, in which case the arrangement shall suffice. To create silos, the user must specify a local variable at the root of the desired directory. This is done by creating a dir locals file. Okay, that's fine. I mean, if you're in that directory, then this will be set, and it will override the denote directory, so any notes that you create will go there instead. So that's totally fine. Could be useful for certain workflows if you want to have like a project that has its own notes folder. Yeah. So just another example of using sort of built-in Emacs functionality to change the behavior of this package. You can do that with org roam also, but I think there's complications with the database for org roam sometimes when you do that. So it's not as supported. Renaming files, which might be kind of useful. Denote's file naming scheme is not specific to notes or text files. It's useful for any sorts of files, such as multimedia and PDFs that form part of the user's long-term storage. That's kind of cool. While Denote does not manage such files, it already has all the mechanisms to facilitate the task of renaming them. To this end, we provide the denote dired rename file command. It has a twofold purpose. One, to change the name of an existing file while retaining its identifier, and two, to write a denote compliant file name for an item that was not created by denote or related commands. So if you wanted to subsume an external file into your denote notes, you could do that. Denote dired rename file command will target the file at point if it finds one in the current dired buffer. Otherwise, it prompts with mini buffer completion for a file name, then uses the familiar prompts for a title and keywords, blah, blah, blah. But that's sort of the nice thing about the way that this package works, is that you don't need the contents of the file to add the metadata for the timestamp, the title, or the keywords. That's just coming from the file name itself. So an MP3 file, in theory, could be put into your notes folder, and the file name will have the necessary metadata for Denote to be able to deal with it. However, if user option Denote DRED rename expert is non-nil, conduct the renaming operation outright, no questions asked. What does it do? Like prompt you and make sure that you're not messing it up. When operating on a file that has no identifier, such as sample.pdf, Denote reads the file properties to retrieve its last modification time. If the file was from a past date, it will get an identifier starting with that date, followed by the time component. Okay, so basically, like someone said in the chat, it will pull the last modified time. So what if I did something like that? If I were to go into my downloads folder, let's see, what can I move into that folder? There's a mesh.zip file here. What if I do that? I don't even know what it has in it. We're in DRED. We can use the Denote DRED rename file, right? So file title, a build of mesh. File keyword, projects. Rename mesh.zip to the particular file name. I'm going to say yes for this. The file is gone now because now it's going to be in my Denote folder. So if I go to Denotes, well, it should be in here, right? Or is it back in the downloads folder? Right there. Okay, so it doesn't move it per se, it just renames it. Be nice if it moved it too. Let's see. The final step of the Denote DRED rename file command is to call the special hook Denote DRED post rename functions. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, I wonder if that's a way to move it if you wanted to. File type extension is read from the underlying file and preserved through the renaming process. Files with no extension are simply left without one. So I could just move this file basically. If I were to copy that into my ring and then go into this folder and press P, now I have this file basically that has the appropriate date from when the file was created, which is in March 15th, I think, of this year. So that's a quote-unquote note at this point, and maybe you could even link to that. I wonder if you could link to that. But the interesting part here is that you're losing the capitalization of certain things in the title because it's not part of the file content, so I don't know how that works. Okay, so let's see. Let's go back to the manual. Converting files to Denote notes. Oh, is that what I was supposed to do? It's in the dev branch, and I probably don't have that. Okay, so renames a file to the Denote format while also inserting the relevant front matter to the top of the file. Let's see. Only condition for converting a file to a Denote note is it must be a regular file, not a directory named pipe or etc. In a DRED buffer, Denote DRED convert file to Denote operates on the file at point. Does it move it to the right folder? I don't think that exists right now in my build. Denote create. No. Okay. Convert. That was the right name. Denote convert. No. Okay, so I don't have that yet. So that's cool. I mean, if you want to take existing files, let's say you have a folder full of notes, like normal org files or text files that you want to convert. I've got like a lot of old markdown notes files from a long time ago before I was using org for a lot of stuff that would be cool if I could convert those over. So you could probably automate this to some degree by doing that. Gun says, well, not in a zip file. Yes, that's true. Not in a zip file. You're not going to have this metadata appended to the beginning of a zip file. But at least the file name has enough info that you could process it. All right. And I think there was another aspect to renaming files. I think it will rename or rewrite the metadata. For the time being, the only function we define is the one which updates the underlying note's front matter to match the new file name. So you can go rename the file. How about this? Let's try this. This is this is a plain text. So I'm gonna go drred rename file. Now I'm gonna call this is another plain text. File keyword, we'll put it back to goofs again. I'm gonna rename it, and it asked me if I want to replace the front matter. So it basically says, do I want to change the title of the file and even the tags? But it maintains the original timestamp, basically. So I'll say yes, and if I go look at that file, then it has the updated title. So that's something that org roam doesn't give you by default, I think. There's no way to rename a note file without having to do things manually. So that's kind of a nice benefit here. However, if there's links between files, I don't know how that works. I think we should start looking at links now, because that's an important part of this whole thing. All right. One last thing to mention about files, I think, is this part. Features of the file naming scheme for searching or filtering. Since it has this information here, there's ways that you can use that for searching and filtering. Let's see. Yes. Maximum effect is avoid using multi-word keywords. You can allow multi-word keywords, probably not a good idea. So yeah, I think that the point there is that it's easy to come up with your own custom filtering using existing functionality with Emacs or with Unix commands to filter files based on what's in the file name. So it makes sense. All right, linking notes. That's what we want to look at next. The denote link command inserts a link at point to an entry specified at the mini buffer prompt. Links are formatted depending on the file type of current note. In org and plain text buffers, links are formatted thus, basically looking like org links, while in markdown files, they're expressed as markdown style links. But they have the denote colon at the beginning, like Gun says. Drishal says, am I a bit too late? Well, you'll see, I guess. When denote link is called with a prefix argument, it formats links like denote identifier. The user might prefer its simplicity. Okay, that makes sense. Rochelle, you asked me if we were having a stream, and I replied to you saying, yes, I'm about to announce it. Okay, so let's see. Let's try linking to another note. So in this plain text file, because it'll be interesting to see how it works from plain text, we are going to use denote link. And it does not give you the nice list of titled notes without the file name like org roam does, but that doesn't necessarily matter that much, because if you're using something like Vertigo or another completion system where you can do fuzzy matching, you just type system, you see system crafters, and when I press enter, it inserts the link there. Now there's nothing that makes this note show up in a more appealing way. And I do see that the identifier, like, obviously you see here that it's just a timestamp. So there's no note title information in this, but that's okay. That doesn't really matter too much. If I click on this note, this link, what does it do? Okay, so it does actually open the link. Is there a minor mode active in this buffer that causes this to happen? Or does it just like hook into some functionality of Emacs, I guess? Okay, so we can do the prefix argument as well. So control U denote link, and I'll put in mesh. Okay, so it just puts in a link without the title, which is kind of ugly in a text file. Gun says, what if two files do have exactly the same timestamp? That's a great question. I don't know. Is it possible that the timestamp is created in a way? Yeah, there's no microseconds here. So if you're creating notes so fast that you do two in the same second, then you might have problems. But I guess that's not. Well, the only way that it could happen is if you created another file at the same time as you created a note, and then you convert the file into a note, and they have the same timestamp. That could be a problem potentially. I'm not sure though. Oh, and let's also see, can I link to that file that I dropped in here? What about denote link? Okay, so it doesn't seem to pick up the file that I dropped in. So if I look at this, sorry. This zip file does not show up in the links for Denote link, it seems. Which I suppose makes sense because you're not linking to a note, you're linking to a file. But I would like to be able to do that if you have the ability to pull a file in. So, I don't know. Inserted links are automatically buttonized and remain active for as long as the buffer is available. In org is handled by the major mode. Okay. In Markdown and plain text, Denote performs a buttonization of those links probably on insert. To buttonize links in existing files while visiting them, the user must add this snippet to their setup. Okay, so you have to add the denote link buttonize buffer command function, denote buttonize. So that will go through the buffer and find all of the denote links and then turn them into links. I would like it if it would change the display so that it would use the name of the title though, so that it doesn't look so ugly, but that's just my preference. And obviously in org mode files, you wouldn't see that. It would look like a normal link. In fact, let's go do that now. Denote link find file. Okay. I guess the idea is that in that directory, you would just use normal find file to find a particular note. So, which isn't a bad idea, honestly. So in mesh, I can add a link to system crafters, and that shows up correctly. Okay. Now, is there a way to add a link while creating a note at the same time? Because it's something that I use sometimes with org roam. Probably you can make your own function for that. I imagine it's not added by default. Let's see. I think your name is Andre, probably. You can also create a denote with a specific time, which can conflict with an existing one. Okay. All right, so major mode agnostic mechanism to collect all link file references in the current buffer and return them as appropriately formatted list. This can be used in interactive commands. Denote link find file is such a command. It uses mini buffer completion to visit a file that is linked to from the current note. Cool. How does it do that? Also has a backlinks functionality. Let's try that. Denote backlinks. Okay, so you saw there was a bit of a delay there. I think it goes and searches all your files to find them. So there's no database like with org roam to store all the backlinks. But it's nice that you do have the ability to get backlinks for a particular file. You don't get summaries of the places where the link is created, which is kind of a nice feature of, excuse me, of org roam, which I don't use that frequently, honestly. Logseek has a much better facility for this, where it gives you really nice embedded views of files that are backlinked. Org roam doesn't do it quite as well. It does a decent job of it, but not quite as great. And this, obviously, you have to go look at the file yourself and find out where the link occurred. And I don't think it even jumps to the point where the link is, which sort of makes sense. Each file name appears on its own line and is buttonized, so it performs the action of visiting the reference file. The backlinks buffer looks like this. Okay, so you do have the ability to get backlinks. And honestly, unless you use backlinks all the time, maybe it's fine for it to take a moment for it to find all of them. You know, you don't really need it to be instant. With Logseek, when you're looking at a note, you can have a panel open to the side that automatically shows you the backlinks to that current file, which can be pretty nice. Org roam, you might be able to do that. I'm not sure exactly if you have to set a hook to do that, but it can be nice to have that functionality, but maybe if you don't really use it, then this is better. I don't know. I don't use backlinks a whole lot with org roam, even though I should, because that's sort of the point. So, you know, this is fine for me, I think. Placement of the backlinks buffer is subject to the user option denote link backlinks display buffer action. So it's basically using the display buffer action type of functionality to decide where that backlinks buffer shows up. I mean, that's sort of like really nitty gritty customization if you wanted to do such a thing. Adds links at a point matching a regular expression. Okay, so what is this? Let's do this really quickly. Denote link find file. Okay, And what if I go to this other buffer, this txt file? What was it? If I go to another plain text and use the same function, find file. What is it supposed to do? Denote find file, link find file. Use mini buffer completion to visit linked file. You mean the one under the cursor? Oh, I should probably buttonize this file, shouldn't I? Denote buttonize. Oh, come on. It's not interactive. Okay, let's go back to our scratch buffer because we want to add that, I think. And let's take this part out because I don't want to put that in the show notes. That was a failed experiment. Okay, just delete this part. But I do want to, oops, keep using Control-X, Control-S reflexively. The buttonize thing, where was that? There is a, okay, right here. Find file hook, denote link buttonize buffer. So I will add this hook, buttonize all denote links in text buffers. Okay, so now if I go open up that note again, let's kill this note, let's go back and open it up. Now the links show up, and maybe if I use this link find file, no, still doesn't do it. Let's do it right here. That's weird. Link find file. Collect all file references in the current buffer and return them as an appropriately formatted list. This list can be used in interactive commands. Denote link find file. Such a command uses mini buffer completion to visit a file that is linked from the current note. That would be helpful in general. How about I add another link here? Because I think maybe this untitled one is causing the problem because it can't figure it out. Denote link. I'm going to add a link to, this is a blue note. And then I'll also use the denote link find file. Okay, so apparently it has to be a titled note so that it knows where the file name is. I don't know why that's necessary. If I click this, it can find the file. Yeah, that seems like a bug. So maybe someone should report that. But let's see. That is kind of useful though. Let's say you have a file that has a bunch of outbound links to other files and you wanted to quickly jump between them. You could use this denote link find file command to jump to any of them that you want. All right, so then we saw backlinks. Fontify backlinks, etc., etc. Writing meta notes. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting section because I think it gives you some workflow ideas for how you might want to use denote for things like what you might do with org roam. So a meta note is an entry that describes other entries who have something in common. Writing meta notes can be part of a workflow where the user periodically reviews their work in search of patterns and deeper insights. For example, you might want to read your journal entries from the past year to reflect on your experiences, evolution as a person, and the like. For me, I don't evolve at all, so that doesn't help me, but you know, I don't know about you. The command denote link add links, which we covered extensively in the previous section. Did we? Denote link add links? Oh, yeah, it did. I just sort of glossed over that. Okay. Is suited for this task. That's an interesting idea. You will create your meta note the way you use denote ordinarily. Meta notes have the meta note keyword. Okay, if you want to do that. Write an introduction or however you want to go about it. Invoke denote link add links to cite the notes that match to given regex and continue writing. Garjola says meta notes seem to be Zettelkasten's structure notes. Yes, exactly. And that is a very useful concept if you're trying to set up a knowledge system like this that uses more atomic notes. You need to have like higher level notes that can aggregate all these other notes together to have a starting point if you're trying to look at information on a particular topic, especially if you're adding notes and digesting that information in one place. All right, so let me try that. I'm gonna go into, let's see, if I say create a new note, denote, whoops, file title Emacs. I'm going to put it in my normal Denotes folder. And this is sort of my meta note about Emacs. I'm going to save that. I'm also going to create another note about Denote. I'll keep it in my Denotes folder. Denote is a cool Emacs package. Let me just do a little link here. Emacs. Whoa. Package. Okay, so I added that link to the Emacs note, which is cool. What if I want to go in here and use that Denote add links? Insert links matching regex. So I would have to have my notes set up in a particular way to do this. In fact, let me go back to Denotes. This note. I would probably need to add a keyword. So let's see, Denote keyword. There's no way to add a keyword to the file, which would be nice if there was a function where you could just add a keyword and it would do the renaming and all the necessary stuff. But the alternative would be to use Denote dired rename file, leave the title as it is, use add the keyword Emacs there. Replace front matter, yes. Now I go back into the file and it has the file tag of Emacs. So that is one way to change the tags of a file after the fact. That's okay, that's acceptable. And it also gives you a reason to use dired if you don't already, which is kind of cool. All right, so now if I go back into the Emacs note, I can try to use the Denote link add links again. And then let me check the manual really quick. I think there was an example. Oh, interesting. All right, so let's just type in Emacs here, see what happens. All right, so it did add Denote. That's cool. And this won't stay up to date. I'm pretty sure this is just generating it on the fly. So if you wanted to update your meta note to have the related notes, you would probably have to run it again. So if I were to go down here and run the same thing again, type in Emacs, then it would just insert the same thing. So that's just a little caveat there. It's not automatic that this works, but that's fine. Because usually if you're creating a meta note, probably you are wanting to grab all the information that you have at that time. And you could probably make a new note in the future if you wanted to. Maybe it would be useful for a weekly review or a monthly review. I wonder if, let's try this. Let's do add links 2022 07 15. This is gonna put a lot of files in here, I think. Boom. So effectively, you can have a review where you pull in all your journal entries for a given time frame. I guess per month would be easier because you can just have the prefix of the month. So maybe you want to pull your journal entries for the month. You could do that pretty easily. Per the week, you would probably have to come up with a series of regexes or a regex that puts in all the days of a particular week. But you could just write a function and do that, I think, to produce that. Yeah, so I think that's pretty useful. That gives you a way to, oh, let's see, sort keywords. Okay, yeah. Examples of a regular expression which could be used with this command, journal, match all files that include journal anywhere in their name, underscore journal, match all files which include journal as a keyword. Now, the cool thing about the way the file naming works is that the keywords part of the file name starts with 2 underscores, but there's an underscore between every keyword. So if you use underscore journal, it will catch the first keyword and any subsequent keyword that have journal there. So that is pretty clever in the way that the files are named so that you can easily just use that as a way to match the files for a particular keyword. This also says all journal entries in 2022 because you're saying, you know, the beginning of the file must have 2022 and then something in the middle, and then a keyword of journal somewhere, which is cool. Then any files that are text files. So you, Okay, I'm having some internet blips. So if you see the stream do some jumps, that's basically why. Sorry for that. Just taking a look at what's happening here. Buffering, yeah. I think it might be stabilizing now. Sorry for that. Okay, let me take a look at the chat because I may have missed some things. Thomas says it's meant for human use, not programmatic. He mentioned that in his intro video. Maybe I covered that already. Let's see. Gavin says, I only ever wanted basic wiki functionality in org mode with a way to browse links and backlinks. Every single existing solution wants to be an entire note-taking framework. Yeah, that's one thing you can get with this that you don't get with the others, is that you have a more simple way to do all this stuff, and you can sort of build up your own strategy for managing your notes. Main Future says, can you do a tutorial on your web configuration in Emacs? Well, what is web configuration in the way that you wrote it? Is it like how I do web development or how I do generate websites? Because I did have websites. All right. So let's keep moving. We've got about 25 minutes left. So let's see what else we can catch in that amount of time. So let's go back to meta notes. Is it doing it again? Man. Okay, I think it's back. I'm sorry, folks. I don't know what's happening right now. I think my internet provider is crapping out. I have the router right behind me, so it's not a Wi-Fi issue. It's definitely got to be something with the provider. Though I did have trouble with OBS at some point like this, so I'm not sure if that has something to do with it. Enjoy the nice Hall of Mirrors effect. Can anybody see me now? I'm watching the feed on my other screen, and I also see the buffering happening. Oh, it's way behind too. Let me know if you can see the stream. Okay, I think it's better now. Sorry. Anyway, let's try to get through this. Let's see. Meta notes can serve as entry points. We saw that. Meta notes contain a filtered list plus your thoughts about it. The act of purposefully grouping notes together and contemplating on their shared patterns is what adds value. Yeah, that's sort of the point of Zettelkasten and similar approaches, is that you're supposed to be writing small notes anytime you have a thought or an idea, and then sort of digesting that information over time to add value to the notes you're putting together. Personally, I don't do that very well. I probably should do a lot more of that. But, you know, Org Roam gives you the ability to do this kind of thing with backlinks and with the ability to jump between notes very easily. Denote also seems to give you the same ability, just without a database and sort of, you know, with a more do-it-yourself type of quality. But definitely a useful pattern that you can do with this tool. I like the whole add links idea. I think it's pretty useful. All right, so Fontification and DRED, one of the upsides of Denote's file naming scheme is the predictable pattern it establishes. But you can basically set up a Fontification mode. Cool, so you can actually set up a DRED hook. Let's try that out. I'm gonna go back into the Scratch buffer. I'm gonna drop this, let's see, Fontify file names in DRED. Let's just eval this region. And then we'll go into our notes. So let me kill this buffer and then open it again. All right, so it might not, let's see, what was it? Denote DRED mode. Denote Denote Dired mode. Okay, so it's on. So I wonder if it's just how I have my Dired colorization set up with another package that's causing this to... Hold on. Whoa. No. Unmark. Thank you. Dired color... What am I using? Rainbow? I don't remember. Something else is overriding the behavior, I think. Dired... what was it called? Denote Dired mode. Yeah. Whatever I'm doing, it's not taking the functionality correctly. Or configure the user option denote Dired directories and set up the function denote Dired mode in directories. Now, what is that? Dired mode hook Dired. Oh, okay. So it only turns it on in known directories for denote. Okay, that's fine. For the time being, the Dired FL package is not compatible with this facility. I'm probably using Dired FL. Let's see, find library, Dired F. No, probably not. Who knows? Does not only fontify note files that are created by Denote, it covers every file name that follows our naming conventions. Particularly useful for the scenario where, say, one wants to organize their collection of PDFs and multimedia in a systematic way, and perhaps use them as attachments for the notes Denote produces. Now, I did not see how to do that, because obviously this note has the right naming convention, but the link functionality did not actually allow me to add a link to it. Denote link. So the zip file doesn't show up here. I don't know why. Denote attach. No, denote link. Let's see. Link. Backlinks. No. Curious. Did I lose the stream again? This is starting to get really annoying. Man, I keep losing it. I don't know what's happening. Hopefully we didn't lose a lot of what I was saying there. Deno has a dedicated mini buffer history for each one of its prompts. Okay, fine. Don't really care too much about that. Extending Denote. All right, so let's take a look at this, so long as the stream allows me to. Denote is a tool with a narrow scope. Create notes and link between them. Based on the aforementioned file naming scheme, for other common operations, the user is advised to rely on standard Emacs facilities or specialized third-party packages. This section covers the details. So keeping a journal or diary. Let's take a look here. This may actually be what I was looking for. Hey, Ronnie. Doesn't use the or capture functionality, but maybe you don't really need that if you use it this way. While there are subtle technical differences between a journal and a diary, we will consider those equivalent in the interest of brevity. They both describe a personal space that holds a record of your thoughts about your experiences and or view of events in the world. Yes. Suppose you are committed to writing an entry every day. Unlike what we demonstrated before, your writing will follow a regular naming pattern. You know that the title of the new note must always look like a particular, date string, and the keyword has to be journal or diary. As such, you want to automate the task instead of being prompted each time, as is the norm with Denote. So basically create a new note with a particular title automatically without being prompted at all. So this is what you could do. Let's go back into the Scratch buffer. Paste in this function. Create a personal journal entry. Actually, I don't even need to say that because there's a doc string on the function. So I could run my Denote journal, and it automatically comes up with a file with the specified title format with the certain file tag. I'm guessing that I could also set the subdirectory where this would go into. So let's go back and look at that. So if I look at the Denote function, title, keywords, file type, subdirectory. So let's say journal is the thing here. Also file type, I want it to be .org. Maybe, well, hold on. What is that value supposed to be? File type is a symbol among those described in Denote file type. So should I just put nil there, maybe? How about that? Let's put nil, nil. And then subdirectory. So journals, journal, right? Is that what I have it set to be? Denotes, journal. Okay. Now let's reeval this function and then try my denote journal again. Oh, that's not the right place. Interesting. Does it have to be a full folder path? That's not where I expected that to go. Yeah, I don't want that. Yes. All right, let's go back to denotes. Let's see. Let's take a look again. Subdirectory is a string representing the path to either the value of the variable denote directory or a subdirectory thereof. The subdirectory must exist. Denote will not create it. So I probably should go in and make this be explicitly denotes/journal. And now it actually created that folder. It didn't do what the docs say and avoid it. So not sure. Maybe that's a new thing. All right. So now I say the file is actually in the location where I want it to be under denotes journal, Friday 15th July, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So that just shows you how you can create a function to automatically create a particular note. I wonder if there's a way for it to give the default content for the note. Flappy backdrop not resolved yet? No. Once the new house is set up completely, my backdrop issues will be gone completely because I'm going to have a much better setup for that. All right. Main says, are you configured in XWidget plus WebKit? No, I'm actually using a window manager called Herbstluft. And it's like just full screen mode, basically. So this is not Emacs as a window manager anymore. Okay, so denote docs date. Create a new note with the appropriate metadata and file name. Well, I suppose what you could do is just insert text, right? Is that insert the arguments, either strings or characters? Insert thoughts, tasks. I'm just making some introductory stuff here. Alejandro says, could it be that it was Emacs that created the folder? It's possible. All right, let's try my denote journal again. Okay, so it does actually work to just use normal Emacs functionality. And once again, that goes back to Prot's mentality when creating this package. You should be able to just use what you already know about Emacs and do it the Emacs way. So instead of using some complicated templating system for creating a new note with a particular template, just write an Emacs function that calls denote, which creates the desired file, puts you in that buffer, and then you can just continue running Emacs code to insert text or do whatever you want in that buffer. You could start an org clock if you wanted to. You could insert any kind of org metadata. You can do whatever you want just in this function. So your function could have all the workflow information necessary for how you want to create certain kinds of notes. So if you really want to, yeah, Gun says the right thing. I forgot the space here on the tasks entry. If you want to have a certain set of notes that you create often, you can just make your own set of functions and then either invoke those functions using metax or bind them to a key map and then use it that way. You don't even have to use org capture if you just create individual note files for things. Now, if you want to have a file that you create subheadings in using capture templates, then you definitely would need to use org capture. But I kind of feel like that strategy might not work so well with Denote. It probably could work, but I'm not certain about how that would go. So let's see. By invoking my denote journal, you go straight to newly created note. Cool. Denote journal entry with title. Create an entry tag with journal. Okay, so they have their own functions you can use to prompt. Excuse me. So even to the parameters inside of this function, you can call the sub functions for prompting for certain things, and then get the same functionality that you would normally get with denotes. That's kind of cool. So he's also mentioned you can set a timer, which is something I like to do sometimes with writing journals. One way to test your progress is to set a timer, and he's advertising his TMR package, which I should try out. I haven't actually used it before, but you can set a timer with a description. Probably puts it in the mode line, right? Let's take a quick look at the manual for that. Okay. So there's a list of timers. I don't know. We don't really want to go into that right now. Maybe I'll do that in another stream. Ashra says, I misunderstood or understood sarcasm notes instead of set of notes. Maybe that's what it's meant to sound like. I don't know. Okay, let's just make sure that we haven't missed anything critical. The things I wanted to do in the stream were, let's see, where am I? July. So capture templates, backlinks, linking notes, creating new notes, journaling workflow. We basically got all that figured out. So let's think. We got about 10 minutes left. Let's talk about comparison to org Rome. So let's see. Maybe like a pros and cons list. Pros, cons. Let's say lack of database means you miss some functionality, like better backlinks, finding notes by title, especially in completions, generating a graph of all notes. Or let's say like backlink context. These may not matter. So I mean that is a downside. If you've used org Rome before and you like this functionality that org Rome has, then you don't get that necessarily for free. Backlinks you get, but you don't get the context, like the actual location where the note was linked from. Also, finding notes by title is kind of nice to be able to use org Rome find or whatever the command is for that, and then see all the titles of your notes in the completion buffer. However, it is not necessary, because if you use find file, like let's say we go into this buffer, find file, you just get a listing of all your files. Now, obviously, the names of the files are not as nice looking as just the names of the titles of the notes. So that's could be like an aesthetic thing if you care about that. But there's something to be said for being able to just use the files directly as well. Ashra says, org Rome needs a compiler for Emacs SQLite 3, which is especially a hassle on Windows. Yeah, that's definitely a downside of org Rome, having to deal with that compilation of SQLite 3, because they have like a customization to it, and a lot of people run into a problem there. And Ashraz also says, the graph of all nodes is a feature of org Rome UI, though. Well, no, there is actually a graphing functionality built in that uses like an external program to generate like a kind of a not so nice looking graph of the nodes. But org Rome UI is much better, that's for sure. Main says, can you show your config? Check out the description. I have links to all my config there. Ashra says, Denote's backlink feature needs xargs and grep, and so that's also a hassle on Windows. Yeah, definitely that's not great, but let's see. Pros, much easier to build your own workflow, especially when you need to use your files across multiple machines. Very easy to filter all of your note files based on file name metadata. Meshes well with existing Emacs functionality. You can use what you know. Or let's say, you can customize behavior more easily because it's just plain Emacs Lisp in most cases. What else would we say? Yeah, the graph is thing. That's what I was thinking about. Cons. Let's just think about cons for a second again. Yeah. Let's see. Note renaming works pretty well. Almost better. Or I would say better than org roam. Also, what is it? Note subdirectories and silos are a first class feature or capability. Yeah, capability, I would say. What else with cons? You may not like how the file name convention looks, especially because that's the way you navigate your notes. Though this is also a benefit. I don't think if there's any other cons. Anybody else got any thoughts on like what a downside of this package versus org roam might be? Because I'm seeing a lot of benefits here. Let's see. Oh, cons. Generating backlinks buffers is slow because it must be done on the fly by scraping files. Doesn't work on 8+3 file systems. Yeah, you mean like file systems with file name length restrictions? I think that none of us use those anymore. Is that right? Hector says, what is more easy to start from zero? That's a good question. I would say this probably is more easy to start from zero because you don't really have to think about it, but org roam, there are dependency issues like with the SQLite backend that could bite you, especially if you're on a platform with constraints. Like let's say if you're trying to install it on Geeks from Melpa or Elpa, or no, not Elpa, from Melpa, probably won't work correctly. But if you install the Geeks package, it will work just fine. On Windows, obviously, there's problems with getting the necessary dependencies pulled down for SQLite 3. Ruji says, file name length limit. Let's just put that there because it is kind of a thing. Like, could cause problems on systems where long file names aren't supported. And also not as clear how to deal with multiple nodes bearing the same name. But starting from zero, yeah, I think maybe this one's easier because you have a couple of commands that just, you know, create note files for you. It's just a matter of whether you think that the way that it creates notes is the ideal way for you. People who are using org roam probably know about the Roam Research or LogSeq programs or any of the other sort of, you know, network knowledge graph programs that exist. So that would be more obvious to people. But someone who doesn't know about that, but is sort of warming up this idea of having simple functionality to do atomic notes, this could be a really good starting point to get into that, and then you can build your own system. So maybe, let's see, much easier to build your own workflow. Garjola says, Denote is much simpler, has great documentation. I think simpler to understand and extend, for sure. And then they both have good documentation. I can't say that one has better than the other because org roam's documentation gives you not only the details, but also the you know, usage patterns you might have or might care about. Gavin says SQLite dependency basically stopped me from ever giving org roam a serious try, so that's definitely a problem. Gunn says timestamps for different time zones not supported. Well, it's all UTC, so I mean, does it matter? Hold on. What do the file names have? Not that folder, this folder. Ah. So 1943. I'm not good with 24-hour time, but I think that's what, 7, which is right. So it's not UTC, is it? It's the current local time zone. Good point. Let's put that in the list. Timestamps are not time zone agnostic, but that might be configurable. So denote time stamp. Time stamp. Oh, how do you handle the last modified case? There's some FAQ here we might look at for, well, we're kind of out of time, but let's see. Time stamp. All right. UTC. Zone. No. Not mentioned at all, it seems. Ooh, use embark to collect mini buffer candidates. So there's a lot of stuff in this manual that I didn't get a chance to get to. So we saw the keep a journal or diary, but there's other stuff that you can look at as well. Narrating the list of files in DIRED, which is kind of like the filtering thing that Denote makes a thing about. Using embark. Searching file contents. I mean, that's kind of not really necessary if you know how to use like consult RG and other things related to that. Bookmark the directory with the notes. Use consult notes package. So someone made an extension to consult to search notes, which could be kind of interesting. I'm not sure. I don't know if anybody uses Fastmail, but I keep getting spammed by people who are trying to steal my Fastmail account. So that's kind of fun. Consult notes. Emacs. Cool. Yeah, mclearc. What's the Colin McClear? Yeah, I've seen this person around. So, selecting notes via consult, that could be kind of interesting. This is for Rome. What about Denote? Cool. So then that might be interesting to look at, actually. I might want to check that out. Treat your notes as a project. Certainly. You can just use project.el to jump to that thing and also find file. That could be pretty useful, actually. So let's try that really quickly. Let's go into eShell. Go into denote, denotes, git init. So now that it's a git repo, I can use control XPF. And then anything that's even in a subdirectory shows up as something I can search against. So journal. That could be a pretty nice way to look at all of your notes files and search them, or search for a particular note that you're looking for, like crafters, pretty easily. So just using, what is it, project find file. But that requires that you make your notes folder a project, but that might be useful actually if you are going to use Git to sync your notes between machines. Alternate Ved says, not sure if it was mentioned, but there were some already interesting packages extending it like consult notes. Yeah, I want to try that one now because it might be pretty useful. All right, so anything else? Yeah, that's pretty much it for now. So anyway, just to sum it up, I highly recommend trying this out. I'm kind of curious to try using it for a while for my own notes and see how it goes, because I might be able to find a workflow that I like that could potentially solve some of the things that I don't have problems with org Roam, but I have workflow deficiencies because I'm not really trying to solve certain problems. But if I can do it in a way that makes more sense to me with Denote, I might stick with that instead. So we'll have to see how that goes, but definitely give it a shot. I am going to put the configuration that I worked on in this scratch buffer into the show notes. Let's just drop it down right here. EL. Paste that in. Cool. Also check out, let's see, go to the extending Denote. Yep, just leaking that in. And that's pretty much it for this week. So like I said, there's a good chance that I won't have streams the next 2 weeks while I still get like the power and internet situation set up in my new house. But until then, I'll try to see if I can get some videos out if time permits. And otherwise, you'll find me on all the normal places, and I'll let you know about how everything's going so that you know when the next stream will be. Anyway, go check out the new crafted Emacs. We renamed the repo, like I mentioned before. Thanks to Jeff for hooking all that up. And until next time, what am I saying? Happy hacking? Yeah, happy hacking. Yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot for joining.